let's go around really quickly and let's all introduce ourselves again, just so we kind of get that down. So I'll start. Ani Shalom, Ani Bani.
Ani Shalom Scott.
Great. Start with the Shalom, and then Ani Scott. You got it. You got it perfect. You got it. Well done. Shalom.
Shalom, Ani Nico.
Shalom, Ani Caroline. Shalom, Ani Ali. Shalom, Ani. Shalom, Ani.
Shalom, Ani Jennifer.
Shalom, Ani.
Shalom,
Amazing. You guys really, you got that. So that's basically the easiest way to introduce yourselves. We're going to discuss now a few fancier ways, but if all fails, if you remember your Ani, right, and your Shalom, then you can introduce yourselves to someone very easily. Okay, so if you take out your little packet over here, just take a quick look at it for a second. If you want to look at the transliteration pronunciation guide. So there are many different ways of transliterating Hebrew. I just chose what seemed intuitive to me, but you'll certainly find other ones. By the way, you'll notice when you arrive in Israel that, does anyone remember what the 3 official languages, actually there's 2 official languages, what the 2 official languages are in Israel? Close, Hebrew and Arabic. Hebrew and Arabic. So you'll see in all the signs, including like the, the signs on the highway and stuff like that, you'll see all the names of the cities in Hebrew and Arabic and also in English, even though English is not an official language, but because there's so many tourists who come, everything's also translated into English. Now sometimes you'll find some interesting spellings, especially on menus, so keep an eye out for a little bit of like an English experience, but Israeli version. It can sometimes be a little bit amusing. And you might also notice some Russian, especially in the hospitals. There's a huge Russian population in Israel which arrived about 10 years ago. There's an enormous Russian aliyah. Aliyah means immigration to Israel. It literally means to go up, because there's an idea of going up into the land. You're kind of elevating yourself when you go to the Holy Land. In any case, you'll meet very many Russians, also many Russian doctors. So that's something that you will, don't be surprised at that. Okay, so back to our transliteration pronunciation guide. Our friend, the ch sound. Let's all say that again. Ch. One more time. Ch. Let's say hummus. Let's say chalas. Now that's actually an Arabic word, but it's entered into Israeli slang, and we'll talk more about that later. So the ch sound here, I've denoted with the KH. Okay, so that's the ch. All the other letters, whenever you see an I in this transliteration, it's always to be pronounced E, like a long E. The A's are always short A's. In Hebrew, the A sound is A. Let's all say A. A. And the EI or EY sometimes is the long A. Great. The regular E is a short E, like E. And the U is a long U, like U. Finally, the O is a long O, like O. Okay? So if you look at our first word that we already discussed, shalom, so that would be pronounced shalom. Let's look at the next word. This is a very useful word. In fact, my husband says that he basically got around all of Israel. He lived there for about 5 years. He said this was like his word. He didn't know much else, but he knew the word slicha. Let's all say that. Slicha. Very good. Your chas are really coming along. One more time, slicha.
Slicha.
Great. So that word means excuse me or sorry. And just like here, if you're looking to talk to anyone, a bus driver, someone in a hotel, someone in a restaurant to get a waiter's attention, you'll just say slicha. Slicha. And that should be enough to get their attention. It also means sorry, so that's also useful. So that's a really basic and useful word to have. Our next word we're going to discuss is just our introductory basic words, is the word for thank you. And that word is toda.
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 Great. So again, it's Americans, the O sound isn't quite a long O, it's not toda, it's more toda. It's like a lighter sound kind of, but if you say toda, that's fine too. I'll try and pronounce as well as I can, and I'm going to show you a video soon with some real native speaking Israelis, and you'll kind of hear kind of the lilt of the language a little better. Okay, so we have slicha, excuse me, or I'm sorry. We have toda, thank you. And our next word is, along those lines, the word for please or you're welcome. And Israelis use this for both, so don't get confused. And that word is bevakasha. It sounds kind of like buyakasha for those of you who are Afghans, but actually, now that you know Hebrew, if you ever have the yen to watch that movie again, which I don't know that I recommend, but if you do, he actually, when he's supposed to be speaking in Kazakhstanian, whatever that language is, he's actually speaking Hebrew the whole time, because Sacha Baron Cohen is actually grew up in Israel, so you might be able to catch some sort of Hebrew words in there. That's kind of an inside joke for the Israelis in the crowd, I guess. So, bivakasha. Great. And now let's add to that our basic yes and no words, which are very important, very similar to the Arabic words. For those, at least one of them is ken, and lo. Very good. Ken, and lo. Very good. And finally, the most essential word, aside from slicha, you'll need is where is the bathroom? Because when you gotta go, especially if you, God forbid, should have shil, which hopefully you will avoid. So if you check your one of the new handouts I gave you, you can see if you can discover on your own what shil might be. Hopefully you won't be cursing that. Okay, so let's practice saying, where is the bathroom? Eifo. One more time, eifo. Hasherutim. Very good. So you hear the R sound, the resh sound, isn't like sherutim, as an American would say. It's sherutim. I'm not even saying it right. It's like from deep inside your throat, a place that I cannot access as a fellow North American. But if you say r, like kind of an American R, that's fine. People know what you're saying. So, eifo hasherutim. Very good. One more time, because you're going to need this one. Eifo hasherutim. And all together, eifo hasherutim. Excellent. So if nothing else, these words should serve you pretty okay, and then you can kind of just lapse into English and people will be fine. But it's nice, Israelis appreciate it, just like anyone in a foreign country. They appreciate the fact that you're kind of making an effort, even though, you know, obviously you're not going to be mastering the language in this short time, unless you're a complete genius. All right, so let's see if we can get a little more conversation now that we've gotten our basic words here. And we talked about how to introduce ourselves using the word ani, I, which actually in Hebrew, there's no real word for am or is. That's not true. There is a verb to be, but when you create most sentences, you kind of leave that out. So you just use the pronoun ani or I, and then you go straight to whatever you are, or so instead of saying, there's no separate word for am, you just say I. Ani, and then your name, not Ani something Bonnie, just Ani Bonnie. So we've mastered that. Let's kind of learn a little more vocabulary here. So the word for name is Shem. Great. Now, the word for my or mine is Sheli. Great. And finally, we have the word, instead of the article the, Hebrew uses a lot of prefixes. So there's a prefix, which is just a little letter hey. Remember your hey? So that's pronounced ha. So let's put them all together. We want to say, literally you translate as, the name of mine is, but in Hebrew, it doesn't sound awkward. You'd say Hashem, Sheli, and then your name. So let's say that together. Hashem, Sheli, and everyone say your name all at once. Very good. One more time. Hashem, Sheli, and then your name. So again, now you can say Shalom, Ani, Bonnie, or you can say Shalom, Hashem, Sheli, Bonnie. Now, just to confuse a little more, I'm going to give you one more way to introduce yourselves that you might hear, and that's why I'm telling it to you this way, because most Israelis actually don't use Hashem, Sheli. Sometimes they do, but in Israel, people speak a lot of slang, and generally, they would actually use this final formulation. And that formulation is literally translated as, I am called, or they call me. Okay? They call me Bonnie. But it doesn't sound so awkward in Hebrew. This is what most people will say. So, the word for they call is korim. And the word for me or mine, it's a little bit different than the sheli, is Li,
Li.
and then you'd say your name. So you'd say Korim Li, and then your name. Let's say that together. Korim Li. You got it. So now you've got 3 ways to introduce yourselves. You can just pick your favorite and stick with it. You can try and use some different ones. That's it. So I'm going to put you into pairs, and we're going to do a little bit of practice in just a minute. I just want to give you a few more terms, and then you're going to have your own little dialogues with, I guess, the person sitting next to you, or best friend across the room. You can pair up with someone else if you want. Now that we know how to introduce ourselves, we're going to learn how to greet other people, or ask other people what their name is, how they are, where they're from, etc. So this should do you for some a good basic conversation. So you need a few more words. The first word you need is me. Can you say that?
Me.
Great. Pretty simple to pronounce. That means who, or who is, or who are. So for example, who are you? Okay? The next word you're going to need, these are both words to just know in general for other things as well, is ma. Great. Ma means what, or what is, what are. Because again, the is and the are come implied in Hebrew. So now let's ask someone, who are you? So the word for I is what? Ani. Good. Now the word for you is, actually before I tell you this, I have to preface with something. I didn't mention this before, but I should have. So Hebrew, just like Spanish and French, is actually a gendered language. That means that unlike English, there's not just one word for you, okay? In English, you say you, and that can be referring to a man or a woman. Same thing, your you plural could be referring to a group of men or a group of women. Hebrew doesn't work that way, unfortunately, which makes it a little trickier for us, but we will get it, so don't worry. And if you use the wrong gender, then people will know what you're talking about, so it's okay. Basically, Hebrew is very gender specific. So instead of saying just a generic word for you, there's you for a woman, and then you for a man. And that goes along with all the other pronouns except for ani, and the word for we, which is anachnu, which we're not going to really talk about, but you might hear it. So you, singular, you plural, they singular, they plural, he singular, she, well, we have, I guess, he and she. Those are all, they come in both versions, the male and the female. So you're going to notice beside these words, if you look to the third little paragraph of the 5th line, where it says, miata, who are you? In parenthesis next to there, it says ms. That stands for masculine singular, okay? And if you prefer to just write boy or girl or woman or man, then that's fine. And after miat, which is who are you, for speaking to a woman, addressing a woman, I put fs, which is feminine singular. So you might just want to fill in what those mean. Sorry, I didn't get you written here. And so on. So as we go down, I'll be giving you both formulations for when you're speaking to a man, when you're speaking to a woman. And again, if you don't remember, that's fine. Everyone's going to know what you're talking about. So let's learn. Oh, and to go along with that, also both nouns and adjectives are also gendered. So just like in French, right, you would say la table, which means the table, but la is a feminine article. And if you have a pencil, you might say le crayon, right, the pencil, but that's the masculine form of the article. So in the same way, Hebrew also, every word in Hebrew, every noun is either feminine or masculine. And also, the adjectives need to be also switched from feminine to masculine, depending on what the noun is. But we're not really going to get into that, just so you know. So that's kind of the one, I'd say, major challenge if you're not used to that kind of, if you don't know a language like that already, it does make it a little more complicated to learn all the different formulations, but you're not going to have to worry too much about that. We will have to worry about it here, just for these couple of words. Let's learn them. So ata means you if you're addressing a man. So let's all say ata. Very good. Everyone point to an ata. There's not a whole lot of them to choose from here. And say ata. And you can say ani. Well, you guys can point to each other, I guess. Ata. Okay, now everyone, let's learn the feminine you. So that's at. Very good. Everyone point to an at and say at. Good. All right, I'm gonna now mix it up, and you guys have to point to the right person depending on the article I give you. At. Ata. Ani. Ata. At. You got it. Okay, good. So it's not that hard, right? Not that hard. Okay, now let's put our word for who or who is or who are together with our pronoun at or ata, depending on who you're talking to. So if we're going to ask someone who they are, if we're talking to a man, you would say mi ata. Very good, and then they'll tell you. Ani, or korim li, or Hashem shali, right? Now if you're addressing a woman, you would ask mi at. Very good, and again, they would respond appropriately. Now if you want to get fancier, you can ask them, what is your name? Okay, not just who are you, but it's kind of a little chutzpah, right? A little bit of a, it's okay, you can do it. Israelis, one thing you'll learn very quickly, Israelis, they're not the most, they don't stand on their manners too much. So Israel is a place where, they're living in like a rough neighborhood in the Middle East. There's not a whole lot of time to, worry too much about external frivolities. So they tend to kind of just cut right to the chase. They get right to the point. You might notice some slightly, how do I put this nicely?
Abrupt.
Abrupt, yeah, maybe a little bit abrupt, or just, they're very frank, right?
You might perceive as a conversation being crude. They'll speak to you in English, right? One of my dear friends, Dr. Saidis, who loves art. And if, and he'll say to me, you just said the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And you're so wrong. How can you be wrong? How can you be that wrong? And in the U.S. we wouldn't have that kind of conversation. We wouldn't be quite that.
Especially not in Georgia, right?
Yeah, especially not in Georgia. And the angrier we get at each other, the more engaged he becomes, the more he loves it. And then when it's time to go, we're just even better buddies. So that's one version of this.
Yeah.
People they're not shy. For example, although there are Africans there, they'll come up and they'll start talking to you and they'll say, "Can I touch your hair?" Okay, they'll be a little more in your face than maybe you would want to be. Okay, but it's not necessarily to be insulting. It's just that again, the culture it's less smooth, particularly in the South.
But they are extremely hospitable. Israelis will, you'll be on a bus, they might invite you over for Shabbat to spend Sabbath with them. There's a famous saying about Israelis that they're compared to the sabra fruit. Native born Israelis are called sabras. A sabra fruit is a fruit that grows on the cactus, which is, I guess, is that called in English? I don't know. Fruit that is sabra. And the reason they're compared to this, or they're referred to as sabras, is because they're prickly on the outside, but sweet on the inside. So you just have to just kind of take it with a grain of salt, realize this is just their way of expressing affection. This is just how they are, they're honest. And once you get to know them, you'll realize that they're really loving and caring. And once I had a friend when I was studying in Jerusalem, and she was married, and she got into a cab. Cab driver experiences are always extremely interesting. So if you have a cab driver, don't be afraid to talk to them. They'll speak to you in their broken English, and they might tell you some interesting stories. They might ask you some kind of crazy things. But it's always interesting. And if you get someone who looks a little older, you might want to ask them if they were there before the creation of the State of Israel, if they were there for any of the wars, and they might have amazing stories to tell you. In any case, so my friend was once getting into a cab, and she'd been married for quite a while, and she was a very religious woman. So in general, kind of the religious community there, they'll have lots of children right away, right? It's kind of like religious Christians, they'll just kind of get going. So she got into a cab, and they start chatting, and the cab driver says to her, so, how old are you? So first of all, would any American ever, ask a woman how old she was? No. So that's, the first thing. She's okay, fine. So she told him, she's I'm 33 or 32, whatever it was. And he's oh, are you married? And she's yeah, I'm married. And he's do you have children? And she's no, don't have children. She's so who's the problem with, you or him? And she was just excuse me, like, that is not okay, you know? But he didn't mean it, like, he didn't, and she, of course, told us all the story, and, like, she got really angry and started, like, yelling at the cab driver and giving him, like, a lecture on, like, this is not how you, like, you can't talk to people like that. But, like, for him, like, he just, I guess that was, they say in Israel, it's like, everyone's kind of like family, so they kind of treat you like family, you know, they might be loud, they might, like, ask you questions that are a little personal, ask you, like, you know, you go home and your parents are like, so, when are you getting married already? You know what I'm saying? Like, they might, like, so Israelis are like that, but, like, the whole country kind of assumes that you're close like that. So don't be offended if you have such an experience. It's not you, it's just a cultural thing, and, like, you'll get used to it if you're there long enough. And if not, then you'll be back in Georgia soon enough, and everyone will be super polite to you. That's the one good thing. Like, they'll tell you to your face, like, what they think. They're not going to be like, oh, bless your heart. Oh my gosh, did you see what she's wearing? So, like, you have to appreciate some of the frankness to a certain extent. Anyway. Okay, moving on. So let's learn how to say, what is your name? So we're going to use our word. By the way, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions or anything unclear, anything you want to go over here. So we're going to use our word for what is, okay? And then add the word for name, which you may remember. What's the word for name? Close. Shalom is close. It starts with a sh sound. Shelly, also close, not quite there. So look back at page down. Shem. Shem. So you'll notice another kind of thing that makes Hebrew actually quite a relatively easier language to learn is that all the words are built on roots. Most roots have 3 letters. And kind of just by manipulating that root, you can turn like a noun into a verb, you can play with the verb really easily, and stuff like that. So we're going to use the same root from Shem, and we're going to change it a little bit, and we're going to say Shimcha.
Shimcha.
Good, that's a good cha word. So now let's say, what is your name? Ma Shimcha.
Ma Shimcha.
Excellent. Now let's ask a woman what her name is, okay? So now we're going to ask again, ma, what? Ma. Shmech. As you can see, there's a little ch going on. This is very good practice. Ma shmech. And then she can answer Hashem, Sheli, my name is, whatever. Okay. And we're going to skip the next part because I want to kind of cover a little more ground. So after you've introduced yourself and you found out the other person what his or her name is and they've answered to you, you might want to say, nice to meet you. So the way we say nice to meet you is Na'im me'od. Very good. Let's say that one more time. Na'im me'od. Excellent. And after you've met, shake hands or whatever, and you're going to leave now, you can say shalom again, which means goodbye as well as hello and peace. Or what most Israelis say, it's again a bit more of like a normal thing that Israelis would say, is lehit ra'ot. Great. And that means see you, whether or not you're actually going to see the person again. So let's say it again, lehit ra'ot. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you to turn to a partner. Someone, let's everyone turn to the person on their right. And if you don't have someone on your right, maybe you can form a group of 3. Okay, so want to join some, or if people want to join like groups of 3, you can do that also. But find a partner. Okay, so join groups of 2 and then one group of 3. And then just practice introducing yourself. You want to start with shalom. And take turns asking each other what your names are. Again, pay attention to the gender of the person. Most of you are going to have girls, so I guess it's pretty easy. And you can choose how you're going to introduce yourself, whether you want to say Ani, and then your name, or Hashem Sheli, my name is, or Korim Li, they call me. And also choose the way you're going to ask them who they are. You can say Miata, Mashimcha, Mashmech. And then don't forget to say, Israelis do have some manners. They do say nice to meet you, so you can add that in and lehit ra'ot. Okay? So I'll give you 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll learn something else.
Ani Miko.
I was going to exit the audit.
It was great. Shalom Mashiach. Shalom. Hashem What is your name? Name? New?
Oh.